Today, we're diving into a technology that is seriously messing with our sense of reality. I'm talking about deepfakes, and trust me, they're changing everything.
Let's start with something super simple. A phone call. We do it every day, right? You get a call, you hear a familiar voice, your boss, a friend, your mom, and you just trust it. But what if you shouldn't?
Okay, now look at this number. 220,000 euros. That's a huge amount of money, and it was stolen all because of one single, seemingly normal phone call. The big question is, how?
Well, here's how it went down. Back in 2019, the CEO of a UK energy company gets a call. On the line is a voice he knows well, his boss, the head of the parent company in Germany. The voice sounds urgent, says the need to transfer money immediately. So, the CEO does it. The only problem, that voice, it wasn't real. It was a complete fabrication, an AI-generated audio deepfake.
And that story, it's a perfect and honestly, a pretty terrifying way to kick off our first topic. This isn't just about doctored photos anymore. Audio deepfakes are this whole new, very personal frontier for fraud. It's a powerful tool for what's called social engineering, basically tricking people into giving up things they shouldn't.
So what even is this technology? How on earth does it work? Let's pull back the curtain and really decode what a deepfake is.
The name itself actually gives you a pretty big clue. It's a mashup of deep learning, which is a really advanced type of AI, and, well, fake. At their core, deepfakes are synthetic media. You've got these AI algorithms that can take real pictures, real videos, real audio, and twist them into something new, or even create something from scratch that looks and sounds completely, frighteningly real.
Now, it's important to know there's a difference here. On one side, you have true deepfakes. These are the sophisticated ones. They use complex AI techniques, like something called generative adversarial networks, to realistically blend and morph media. But on the other hand, you have cheap fakes. These are way simpler. Think basic video editing, clever splicing, or just taking a real video and showing it out of context to change the meaning. No complex AI needed.
So how does an AI get so good at lying? Well, a really popular method is called a generative adversarial network, or again. The best way to picture it is as a competition between two AIs. You've got the generator AI, which is like an art forger, doing its best to create a perfect fake. And then you have the discriminator AI, which is like the expert art critic, trying to spot that fake. The critic looks at the forgery, tells the forger what's wrong with it, and the forger tries again, but better this time. They do this over and over, millions of times, until the forger gets so good, the critic just can't tell the difference anymore.
Okay, so now we kind of get the tech, but the really important part is understanding just how far this threat goes. It's so much bigger than that one phone scam we talked about.
For criminals, especially in the financial world, this is like a whole new super-powered toolkit. They can use a deepfake video to pretend to be you and open a bank account, completely bypassing the identity checks. Or they could create a fake video of a celebrity endorsing some shady investment scam. And get this, they can even use them to fool biometric security, like your Face ID, to take over accounts you already have.
And the danger isn't just about money, it's political too. You've probably seen some of these images floating around online, even if you didn't realize they were AI. Fake pictures of a politician getting arrested, or a famous world leader wearing some ridiculous outfit. These things spread like wildfire. They're designed to create chaos and confusion, and they do a really good job of it.
Now, this all sounds pretty grim, I know, but it's not a totally one-sided fight. The rise of these incredible fakes has sparked a massive technological arms race, a real battle for the future of truth itself.
Which brings us to the big question, right? If AI is the weapon creating the problem, can it also be the shield that protects us? The answer is, well, it's complicated.
See, there's no magic bullet here. Instead, experts are attacking this from a few different angles. First is provenance tracking. Think of it like a digital birth certificate for a photo or video. It uses hidden watermarks or metadata to track where the file came from and if anyone has messed with it. Second, we have content-based cues. This is where other AIs hunt for tiny clues that a human eye would miss. Weird pixel patterns, unnatural audio frequencies, things that scream, "I was made by a machine." And finally, you always need the human in the loop, where actual human experts step in to verify what the automated tools are finding. But here's the catch. It's a never-ending game of cat and mouse. As soon as somebody builds a better mousetrap, a new way to detect fakes, the AIs that make the fakes just learn from it. They evolve. They get smarter, specifically to beat that new detection method. It feels like we're always just one step behind.
And all of this,
leads to what might be the single most dangerous part of this whole technology. It's an idea that doesn't just create fake things, it poisons the real things too. It's called the liar's dividend. And here's how it works. Once everybody knows that perfect fakes are possible, what happens when a real, truly incriminating video of someone comes out? Well, that person now has an easy way out. They can just point their finger and shout, "It's a deepfake." The very existence of this tech gives liars a new, powerful tool to deny reality, sowing doubt about everything.
And this isn't some abstract future problem. It's happening right now. One study found that a staggering 90% of people say that altered images and videos already cause confusion about basic facts. That liar's dividend? It's already paying out in the form of widespread public distrust.
So that leaves us here with a really unsettling final thought. In a world where what we see and what we hear can be so perfectly faked, and where genuine evidence can just be dismissed as a fake, what happens to the idea of a shared reality? When seeing is no longer believing, what in the world do we trust?
Okay, let's dive into one of the most incredible and, frankly, kinda unsettling technologies out there right now. AI voice cloning. You know, stuff that was pure science fiction just a few years ago can now copy a human voice with almost scary accuracy. But how does it really work, and what does it mean for our very idea of truth? I mean, this quote really says it all. The technology has just moved at lightning speed, and it's completely changing what's possible with digital audio and, with our own identities.
Just think about that for a second. That is the kind of power we are dealing with here. The ability to create speech that is so good, you just can't tell it's not the real thing. And yeah, that unlocks this whole world of amazing creative possibilities. But it also unleashes a world of brand new, unprecedented risks.
So let's start with the good stuff, the promise. Voice cloning really imagines a world where communication is just seamless, instant. It can break down language and accessibility barriers that have been around forever. Just look at the disruption in action on this slide. On the left, you've got the old way of doing things, like dubbing a movie. It was this long, painful process, right? We're talking over $100,000 in months of work for just one film, and you'd lose the original actor's performance. Now, look at the right side. With AI, the game has totally changed. It's way faster, way cheaper, and it actually keeps that original voice, which creates a much more authentic experience for people anywhere in the world.
So how does this magic actually happen? Well, it's basically a three-step process. First, the AI listens to a voice sample and just breaks it all down. It decomposes it into its core sound units and learns all the unique things about it, the pitch, the rhythm, you name it. Second, it encodes all of that into something called a speaker embedding. The easiest way to think about it is like your voice's unique digital DNA. And finally, it uses that DNA as a perfect template to generate brand new speech from any text you feed it.
To really get how fast things have moved, let's rewind a bit. Back in 2018, researchers figured you needed around 20 hours of super clean audio to train just one high-quality voice model. That was a huge investment of time and data. But, well, that was then.
And today, some of these models can create a really convincing clone from just 3 seconds of audio. That's not just an improvement, it's a mind-blowing acceleration that takes this specialized, long process and makes it available to pretty much anyone, instantly.
And of course, the applications are already everywhere, transforming whole industries. We're talking everything from localizing video games to running global marketing campaigns, from creating hyper-realistic digital assistants to making e-learning and corporate training more accessible. This tech is being woven into the very fabric of our digital world.
But with all this incredible promise comes an equally powerful peril. Because when a voice can be perfectly copied, it can also be weaponized. And that's creating a whole new frontier for fraud, for misinformation, and for impersonation that we are just beginning to understand.
And this isn't some problem for the future. It is happening right now. According to industry reports, voice fraud jumped by a staggering 442% in just the last 6 months of 2024. This isn't theoretical, folks. This is scammers using AI to impersonate a loved one in a panicked phone call or a CEO authorizing a fake wire transfer.
So the big question is, can our best tools just, detect the fakes? Well, take a look at the data from this forensic study. The equal error rate, or EER, is really just a way to measure how often a system messes up. So comparing a real voice to another real voice, that top line, the error rate is tiny,
0.06. But look at what happens on the next line. When you compare a real voice to a cloned one, that error rate more than triples to 0.20. Our best forensic tools are getting fooled, and they're getting fooled a lot.
The legal system is absolutely racing to try and catch up. To take someone to court for voice theft, you usually have to prove these 4 things. But AI makes all of them tricky. Like, what even counts as a recognizable imitation when it's a perfect digital clone? Or how do you prove commercial advantage if a clone is used for political misinformation instead of some ad? The law is really struggling to find clear answers in this new world.
So this has kicked off a super high-stakes arms race. On one side, you've got AI models getting better and better at making flawless clones, and on the other, you have us trying to build AI that can spot them. It's become this constant, relentless game of cat and mouse.
So, how do we catch these fakes? Well, here's the first huge problem. Research shows that a detection model can be almost perfect at spotting a clone, but there's a catch. It only works if it's been trained on the exact cloning software that was used to make it.
But what happens when that same detector runs into a clone made with a tool it's never seen before? This is the really critical finding. The model's accuracy just collapses. It plummets by over 50%. They can't generalize. And let's be real, in the real world, the bad guys are not going to tell you what tool they used. This failure is what could completely erode our trust in everything we hear.
And believe it or not, it actually gets worse. This chart shows what happens in more realistic conditions. See, in a clean, quiet audio file, the detector is perfect, 100% accurate. Add a little music in the background, and it's still pretty good. But add what's called babble noise, just the sound of other people talking in a cafe or an office, and the accuracy tanks to 50%. It's literally a coin toss.
So we've got this technology that's powerful, dangerous, and really hard to detect. But how do we, as humans, actually hear these things? How do we perceive these synthetic voices? Well, the answer is way stranger and more counterintuitive than you'd probably think.
Yeah, researchers found this totally fascinating paradox. When people listen to modern AI voices, they say they sound more human-like, more natural, even more likable than the old robotic-sounding ones. But, and this is the twist, those same better-sounding voices are actually less intelligible. They're harder for our brains to understand, especially in noisy places. So it's this weird situation where what sounds more human to our ears is actually less clear for our brains to process.
All of this really brings us to a fundamental new reality. We have to start thinking about our voices in a completely new way. It's not just sound anymore. It's a biometric signature. It is, for all intents and purposes, your new digital DNA.
So if this tech is here to stay, how do we handle it responsibly? Well, experts have basically laid out 4 non-negotiable rules. First, consent. It has to be explicit and informed. Second, transparency. You have to tell your audience when they're hearing an AI voice. Third, data security. You've got to protect that raw voice data like it's a bank account number. And finally, usage limits. We have to draw a hard, clear line against using this for anything malicious.
So in the end, we're left with this one big question. Are voices becoming a new kind of currency, a direct representation of who we are in this digital world? The technology gives us this incredible power. The challenge, for every single one of us, is to decide who holds the rights, who gets to give permission, and ultimately, who gets to spend it.
You know that feeling, right? You're watching a movie or playing a game, and you see a character that looks almost human, but something is just off. It's a kind of creepiness you can't quite put your finger on. Well, that unsettling feeling is exactly what we're going to break down today. So let's just get right into it. Why is it that some of these incredible digital creations can give us a sense of, well, revulsion? It's not a technical error, not really. It's more like a glitch in our own brains. And believe it or not, there's a name for this whole thing. All right, so what is this weird, shared human experience? It's something scientists have been poking at for decades, and it's time we put a proper name to this eerie, unsettling feeling. Yeah, if you've ever felt that little cringe, you are definitely not alone. This is a real, recognized psychological phenomenon, and it was first pinpointed way, way before AI video and deepfakes were even a thing. So no, it's not a bug. You could almost say it's a feature of how our brains work. And that brings us to the prime suspect in this whole investigation, a concept called the uncanny valley. This is really the key to understanding why almost human can sometimes feel so much worse than not human at all. So the term itself was dreamed up back in 1970 by Masahiro Mori, a total pioneer in robotics. He noticed this bizarre pattern. As his robots looked more and more human, people liked them more, but only up to a point. Right before they hit that perfect, believable realism, people's feelings would just nosedive from, hey, that's cool, right down to, ugh, get it away from me. And this is it. This is the map that started it all, Maury's original graph. See how it works? As you go from left to right, things get more human-like, and our affinity, how much we like it, goes up. That's that first big hill. But look what happens when you get really close to being perfectly human. Boom, our positive feelings totally crash into this deep canyon. That's the uncanny valley. And what's down there with it? Things like zombies and corpses. Yikes. Okay, so here's the absolute heart of it. Our brains are just incredible pattern matching machines. And when we see something that's, say, 95% human, we don't cheer for the 95% that the artist got right. Nope, our brain immediately fixates on that 5% that's just plain wrong. You know, the dead eyes, the skin that looks like plastic, the smile that's a half second out of sync. And that mismatch sounds a huge alarm bell deep inside our heads. But why, though? Why does our brain have such a strong negative reaction? What's the real motive behind this neurological cringe? Let's unpack the leading theories, shall we? So, scientists have a few main ideas. First up, evolutionary threat detection. Basically, your ancient lizard brain survival instincts see something that looks human but moves weird and immediately flags it as a potential source of disease or maybe a corpse. It's a primal stay-away signal. Then there's mirror neuron conflict. These are the brain cells that help you feel empathy, and they get totally scrambled by conflicting signals. And finally, there's the simple expectation mismatch. The character just breaks all your brain's internal rules for what a human is supposed to look and act like. The bottom line? Our brains are just hardwired for survival, and anything that looks human but isn't quite right sets off a very old alarm system. And you know, this isn't just a theory anymore. Scientists have literally watched this happen using brain scans. A neuroscientist named Dr. Fabian Grabenhorst and his team actually pinpointed the spot, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is a key part of our brain for making value judgments. And guess what? The activity there perfectly matched Maury's uncanny valley curve. Our revulsion is literally visible in our brain activity. Okay, so we've got the theory, and we've got the brain scans to prove it. So now let's go looking for evidence out in the wild, in the movies, games, and virtual worlds that we all know and love, or sometimes that we find kind of creepy. Hollywood gives us some of the best case studies. Think about Avatar. It brilliantly dodged the valley by making the Na'vi look distinctly alien. Because they're blue and 10 feet tall, our brands don't judge them by strict human standards. But then you have a movie like The Polar Express, which became totally infamous for falling right into the valley. Those characters had these vacant, lifeless eyes that just freaked people out. Same thing, arguably, with Alita, Battle Angel. Those giant eyes on an otherwise realistic face created that critical mismatch for a lot of people. And you know, this effect gets even more intense in virtual reality, where our own bodies get pulled into the equation. There was this one study where a female user saw that her own VR avatar had hairy male arms. The results? A really strong visceral feeling of discomfort. Her brain knew her body, and this hyper-realistic but totally wrong gender representation just created this jarring, deeply uncanny experience. This whole idea of mismatched cues gets even more specific when you look at how we perceive male characters showing emotion. There was this fascinating study that used the character Barney from the game Half-Life 2. The researchers discovered that when they turned off the animation in his upper face, you know, the eyebrows and forehead, his expressions of fear and sadness suddenly became way more uncanny. And why is that? Because our brains expect to see those little movements to actually believe an emotion is real. When they're missing, it just screams fake. Okay, so we're seeing how these very specific visual failures, especially around things like gender cues, or how a male character expresses sadness, can land us squarely in the valley. But this begs a huge question for the world we live in now, filled with AI assistants. What about just the voice? Can a synthetic male voice, or any voice for that matter, fall into that same uncanny trap all by itself? Well, the general thinking is probably not. I mean, think about it. A glitchy synthetic voice might sound weird or robotic or just artificial, but it almost never inspires that deep, unsettling revulsion we've been talking about. The big takeaway here seems to be that the uncanny valley is a primarily visual problem. Our ears are just a lot more forgiving than our eyes. A robotic voice is just a robot, but a robotic face is a broken human. So this all leads us to the million-dollar question for today and for the future. With AI getting so ridiculously good at creating digital people, have we finally done it? Have we built a bridge all the way across the uncanny valley? The short answer? Not quite. Yeah, AI has made some absolutely mind-blowing progress, but it still consistently trips up in a few key moments. Get in for an extreme close-up, and it just can't nail the tiny, complex muscle movements of a real face. Ask it to show intense emotions like rage or deep grief, and it misses all those crucial microexpressions. And if you haven't talked for a long time, tiny little errors in lip sync start to pile up, creating that familiar, unnerving feeling that something's not right. But, and this is a big but, here's the final twist. The valley itself might actually be changing. Some research suggests that younger generations, people who grew up completely surrounded by CGI and AI-generated stuff, are just less sensitive to it. It seems like our collective idea of what looks real is shifting, and the uncanny valley might be getting a little bit shallower every single year. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to chew on. As technology gets better and better, which it inevitably will, and AI finally climbs out of that uncanny valley for good, what's the next psychological hurdle we're going to face? When we really truly can't tell the difference between what's real and what's artificial, what becomes the next great barrier in the relationship between us and our own creations? All right, so we are absolutely swimming in AI-generated content these days, right? And look, some of it is incredible, but with every amazing image, every mind-blowing video, a huge question pops up, a real challenge to our digital trust. It's a question we all have to ask ourselves now every single time we're online. You see that video, that picture, even that article, and you just have to wonder, is this real? Or did an algorithm spit this out in like 5 seconds? You know that line between what's real and what's fake? It's not just getting blurry, it's practically dissolving right before our eyes. The AI models we have now are so good, their work is often completely indistinguishable from something a person created. But what if there was a secret weapon? What if we could tag this content right at the source, a kind of quiet, invisible signature that could tell us exactly where it came from? Well, that's precisely where watermarking comes into the picture. Now, here's the really wild part. We're talking about this super modern, cutting-edge AI problem, but the solution? Well, it's actually an old idea. It's been hiding in plain sight for decades. So let's be super clear on what this is. A digital watermark is not something you're ever supposed to see with your own eyes. Think of it like a secret message buried deep inside a file's data that only a specific tool can ever read. And this is a perfect example of that long history. I mean, way before we were all talking about AI fakes, watermarking was already at work in high-security things like your driver's license. It's the tech that secretly links the physical photo you see to the data on the microchip, creating this chain of trust that makes it so hard to tamper with. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this one core idea actually get used into totally different, really high-stakes worlds? First up, biometric security. We're talking about your personal identity here, a place where you absolutely cannot afford to make a mistake. So check this out. This is pretty cool. In these really advanced security systems, you can take something totally unique to you, like your fingerprint, encrypt it, and then hide that encrypted data inside another one of your biometrics, like an iris scan. What you end up with is this powerful, multi-layered ID that's just ridiculously hard to fake, because those two traits are invisibly locked together. Okay, so that's security. Now let's jump back to the modern fight against fakes. How in the world do you watermark something that an AI is literally creating out of thin air? Well, it turns out the approach has to be different for different kinds of media. For text, it's really clever. You basically nudge the AI to pick a very specific, statistically unusual pattern of words. To you and me, it reads totally normally, but to a detection algorithm, that pattern sticks out like a sore thumb. For images and video, it's more about subtly tweaking the actual pixel values to create a hidden pattern that's tough enough to survive things like cropping, compressing, or even getting screenshotted. Of course, this being the tech world, not everyone agrees on the best way to do this. Right now, there's a pretty big debate going on, with two major approaches kind of battling it out to become the standard. Okay, so in one corner, you've got Google's Synth ID. This is the embedded watermark we've been talking about. It's tough, it can survive a screenshot, but it only tells you one simple thing: AI generated. In the other corner, you have C2PA. Think of this as a detailed digital receipt that's attached to the file. It tells you who made it, what tools they used, every single edit. Sounds great, right? The problem is that receipt can be easily stripped away the second someone saves a new copy or takes a screenshot. Poof, it's gone. And this brings us right to the heart of the challenge. Because as powerful as this technology is, it is not a magic bullet. No watermark is truly unbreakable. As expert Heng-Ching Guo puts it, there will always be people actively looking for ways to break these systems. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game between the creators and the attackers. And at the center of this game is a fundamental trade-off. See, to make a watermark really, really hard to remove, to make it robust, you have to make it stronger. But the stronger you make it, the more likely it is to become perceptible, slightly distorting the image or the audio. So designers are always walking this tightrope, trying to find that perfect balance between being invisible and being indestructible. So how do you actually break one of these things? Well, you can compress a file so much that you damage the hidden signal. You could run a watermarked image through a different AI model and have it basically recreate it from scratch. Or you could go old school, just point a camera at a screen and re-record it. A lot of the time, that simple analog trick is enough to destroy the watermark. So, after all that, where does this leave us? What's the ultimate role for watermarking in our digital future? I think the clearest takeaway is this. Watermarking is an absolutely essential foundational layer. It's our best tool for establishing provenance, that verifiable history of where a piece of content came from. But, and this is a big but, it can't solve the whole problem of digital trust on its own. And that leaves us with one final, much bigger question. This technology can give us the origin story of a piece of content, but in an age of deepfakes and rampant misinformation, is simply knowing the source, whether it's AI or human, is that really enough for us to truly believe what we see?